Okay, as is usual in these circumstances, we'll begin with myself and John having a chat, and then sort of in or around sort of 20 to a quarter to, we'll hand over to questions to yourselves, of which I'm sure you will have many. As I said, we'll just follow the thing along and kind of see which particular topics jump out at you. John, thanks very much for coming.
Thank you, Shane.
I'll begin in a very sort of a linear kind of way, and we were discussing, myself and I think one of the social studies classes this morning, sort of how people, I suppose, find the route through their lives to the point that they end up at. Did you, when you were 9 or 10 years of age, envision yourself as a journalist and a social commentator?
No, that certainly wasn't on the agenda at all. I don't, looking back, I don't think I had any sense of what I was going to be or what I would do. I mean, any sense that I had was something existed at the level of fantasy, I think, and I don't think being a journalist was one of the fantasies. But I guess there's a certain pattern that you can see looking back, but I was extraordinarily lucky, if that's the right word, to have certain experiences at certain times. I mean, really, I came from a fairly poor background, and there wasn't much money for education or anything really. So there was no prospect that I would ever go to third level, and I suppose it was inevitable that I would end up in some kind of working from the age of 18 at the latest, which I did. I went to work in CIE in Claremorris in the goods office, and really when I got there I didn't know, it really shook me because I began to become aware that I hadn't thought about this. I hadn't thought about my life in any kind of constructive way at all, really I recognised it as a dead end and was astonished because, I mean, we grew up through the 60s and 70s, which was, there was all of this new influence, television and pop music and all that, and I suppose we picked something up from that, and it sort of excited in us some kind of sense of desire and to be part of that, and I kind of, I suppose at some deluded, naive level in myself, felt that I was going to be doing something like that.
So you kind of engaged with culture, sort of the things that were happening around you. You wanted to contribute.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was always interested in reading and in newspapers. I mean, my father always bought the Irish Independent every day, and for some reason the Evening Press, I don't know, he was quite, I suppose, a Catholic politically, but I would read the papers. He had a room full of books that he'd bought at various auctions, big houses around the area, which he never had time to read, but I used to go in there and steal books out of it and read them. And it was everything.
What were you reading?
Well, every day there was everything from Shakespeare to James Bond. You'd be surprised what he picked up, and he probably wasn't even aware what was in it. But and then I joined the library, and the school library, and then the county library, and I was reading all the time. I was quite unhealthy as a child. I had, I suppose, what would now be recognised as asthma, so I didn't go to school very much until I was about 9 or 10, so most of my education was outside school, really, so far as I'm educated.
What was your experience of school when you were there?
I hated it from the beginning and to the end, and there were no redeeming qualities whatsoever to school as far as I was concerned, except for one, maybe, that despite of everything, there was one, I think, a moment of when I did, which kind of possibly is the most succinct answer to your first question, really. One day there was a particular brother who was a bit of a brute in every other respect, but he kind of had an interest in pupils if they had any particular talent. He was very interested in art, and he's always teaching us art and getting us to paint stuff and things like that, when he wasn't being psychotic. And one day he did this exercise where we'd all written essays, and the usual routine was to pick up the essays, collect them all, and then mark them and give them back. But this day, for some reason, he said, I want to do something unusual. He said, I want you all to take 5 minutes to pick out your best sentence and make it better. And then I want you all to read out your sentences. So I really got into this. I remember the sentence, picking out the sentence and working on it and adding a few clauses and dicking it around. And he praised me so highly that day that I kind of thought that for the first time I actually thought I could actually do this. I can do that.
This is an editor.
Well, no, I thought I can. No, not at that level. No, I was thinking purely this is something I can do because I was no good at sport or anything like that. So it's something I can do that would actually, give me some kind of identity in the class. And so that's kind of where that started, and I kind of developed that. When I often tell the story, when I was 15, I actually was in a competition in which the result was, it was an essay competition, and the result was a dead heat between myself and Enid Blyton, who was, people will remember, maybe this generation of, I don't remember who Enid Blyton was.
People remember the famous five and stuff like that, yeah, ish, some of them, okay.
But to make a long story short, anyway, they decided there was 2 essays which were so good that they would give 2 prizes instead of 1. I got the second prize because I was older. I got 2 guineas. The guy who wrote the other piece, essay, got 5 guineas and got his essay in the school magazine. But when the school magazine came out, it took me 10 seconds to realise that he cogged the whole lot out of an Enid Blyton story.
Oh dear.
So that was, not bad for a 15-year-old. And so that was kind of, I suppose, how I got that interest. But as I say, it took me, when I went to work for CIE, I spent 4 years floundering around in various offices, trying to figure out what had gone wrong with my life. And I decided then I would leave and I would try and go back into the education system. And I decided then I wanted to be a journalist, and I was trying, this hot press had started in 76, 77, and I used to send in the odd article. In fact, the first article I wrote ever sent in for them, they published for some reason.
What was that on?
It was a review of Horselips from the Midnight Club in Balladrine, and it was an astonishing experience to have it published, but I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know whether you could ring the editor and ask him, would he like some more? I mean, I was extraordinarily naive, really, and quite timid. So it took me another 4 years before he actually eventually wrote to me and said, would you write for us more? And so I abandoned my attempt to get an education and got into that, really, So I think the other aspect of your question, the social aspect, I mean, social commentator, I mean, I think that's a function of our generation. You see, our generation was the first, really, that stayed in Ireland for 150 years. And unconsciously, at some level, we picked up a kind of a sense that we were entitled to actually stay and entitled to have a say in what the country would be like. And so we just kind of naturally started to do that. I don't know why we did. And this at divergent places in the country. I was down the west, there were people in Dublin, Fintan O'Toole or Colm Tobin. But we converged on Dublin in the early 80s. And that kind of was a brief, I suppose, counterculture, if that doesn't sound too pretentious, countercultural moment, where there's various magazines, hot press in Dublin, McGill. And that's really where I came to what I do now.
How did you make the